Hi Stampers, it's Lisa with Queen Bee Creations. Welcome to today's live. And today we're going to be doing two cards. We're going to be doing a stand-up angle card or an angle standing card, the zigzag kind of thing. And we're doing it in a slimline version. And because it's slimline, we don't really have Stampin' Up envelopes, so we're making our own. And then I figured that was going to be so easy. We're going to pop in and do a mini version of the same card, kind of, sort of, and then a matching envelope to go with that. So let's go ahead and get started. Here we are down on my desk, and we're going to be using the Easter basket bundle. Okay, so now all of our packaging is coming in these sets like this, where they're going to have the dies and the stamp set in the same size packaging, but all of my magnetic sheets for my dies were in these other things. So I've ordered some new ones. Stampin' Storage has jumped on the bandwagon of our new packaging, and they're making this size magnetic card. So I'll be able to slip those right in the envelope and keep them handy. I've also showed you where I have taken the stamp set and mounted it on the inside and put it on one side, inked it over here, put the clear one over, closed it. I have a short on it. You can go see that. But another thing I decided to do was maybe instead of doing that is what I could do is take and stamp the whole stamp set while I have it on the little sheet. And then I'm going to laminate this. And then I can set my stamps on it to pick them up and put them on this. And then I can store them together like this, and maybe they'll slide out of the envelope better. So just another idea. As I said, this is the new bundle out of the January to April. I believe it's in the mini catalog. I get confused now what's online and what's in the mini catalog, but you want to be sure and order like this month because they're doing bonus days and you get an extra $5 coupon you can use later in addition to your rewards, in addition to the product of the month, in addition to like my bonuses, all kinds of stuff. It's a good month to order even though we don't have Celebration. But we're going to play around with these dies. And at first I was a little confused as to what these strips were. And then I figured it out. They're actually so you can weave the basket. So we're going to play with that. But everything else I already have our die cut and ready to go and colored. Because I wanted to show you both cards and the envelopes. And obviously there's, we need to speed things along. So for our card, I'm starting out with a piece of cardstock that is 8.5 by 10 7/8. Like I came in and I just took 1/8 of an inch off of the edge. For some reason, it just made it fold together better with everything being even without going into 1/16 of an inch. But if you wanted to leave that at the 11, you'll have a little bit of an overhang, but it's not a big deal. Okay, and then I went ahead and I scored it at 3 5/8, and then again at 7 1/4. Okay, then I'm going to take this sheet and I'm going to put it in my trimmer, and I want my point up here, the number 2, to be right up there with the point. And then I'm going to take my very first score line and it's going to go into the track. So I don't know if you can see that real well yet because I haven't burnished them. But this is the points at the 2. And that little thing is right in my track. Okay, so then what I'm going to do is just cut. Okay, so that's going to give me my angle. If that makes you all nervous and you don't like that idea, another thing you could do is you could come down here to 3 3/4, make a little mark, and then you would just cut from this mark to that mark. So it's a personal preference on which you find easier, but I like to show you all the options just so you're well informed. But then we're going to fold this up so that the short side's over here and the long side's over here. And then I need my bone folder to burnish these. Okay, so there's the base of our card. Okay, to go over that, we have 2 pieces of designer series paper. And these are 3 3/8 by 8 1/4. Okay, so there's 2 of those. And then I have a piece of more Shy Shamrock, which is the color I'm using. I pulled that out of the designer series paper. And this is 3 3/8 by 5 3/4. Okay, so that's going to go right here on the front. And we have a little trick to cut that angle as well. But that's just dry embossed using the Sunflowers embossing folder, which is a big 6 by 6 one that I did have in front of me and misplaced. Okay, so that's our 3 layers there. We have the basic white that's going to go on the inside, like we always have on our cards, you know, or almost always. Then we have our basket and our bunnies. Like I said, already die cut, ready to go. For the basket, what you're going to need to do is take these little strips. Okay, the basket was cut out using this. And then these are the strips, and it cuts a whole bunch of them. I only used 3. I suppose you could make a tighter weave if you wanted to. But you just kind of do that thing. We used to make placemats as a kid in like grade school. I remember we did with construction paper. But it was over, under, over, under, over, under. Did you guys do those? Or am I just like remembering something really weird from my childhood? Okay, and then we're going to do the next one is going to go the opposite. This one's going to start with an under and then go over. So I'm just feeding this through. Okay, it's going to leave a little bit hang over the edge, so we'll end up gluing those down and then cutting that off. So don't worry. And then my last one, like I said, I only did 3. And so the last one's going to do like the top. We're going to go over under. Oops. I maybe should have done both of the over unders first for the top and the bottom, and then done the middle one last, because there's more play in the middle than there is at the top and the bottom. But you're getting the idea that we're over under to get our weave going here. And it is crumbling the end a little bit, but I'm not going to worry about that because we're going to be snipping that off anyway. One more. The take your pick tool could be super helpful in helping you get that through there too. But then I'm just going to arrange them. So, you know, one's in the middle, one's in the top, one's in the bottom. And there we have our basket weave. Like, how fun is that, right? Then we need just a teensy bit of glue, like not much at all. And we're going to put just a little dot. And I mean like not much at all, like very little. I just barely want some in there. Okay, so we don't want it to ooze over the edge. We just want it to tack it down. You may even want to put some on a little piece of cardstock and use that as like a little spatula to apply it, or a toothpick, so that you could really control how much you're adding there. Just making a pile on maybe your silicone mat and then dipping a toothpick into it and then using that toothpick to apply the glue. Oops. Okay, so I'm just snipping off these edges, and I kind of took a snip to the top of the basket, but that's okay because the blue, or the pink, sorry, little border is going to cover that up. We won't see it anyway. And it's perfect like that. But I thought it could use a little something extra. So I came in with some crumb cake ink and went over the basket, just adding some texture, I guess, or, you know, some depth. I'm just being messy. I mean, I'm not too controlled with it. But by doing this with the sponge dauber, it's giving a little more definition to the weave. Okay, and you could be more, you know, fussy with it, do better on the edges, you know. I'm just doing a real quick and easy demonstration for you here, but you get the idea. Okay, then we're going to take our little grass that I die cut using the dies. That's this one here, and then the pink was done with this piece and this, and we're going to just assemble our basket. So again, just a little bit of glue. And we're going to do the grass. Then I'm going to take the pink, which I've put the adhesive sheet on the back. So it's kind of like, I don't know, paper dolls, where you're just layering it up and putting something together. Okay, then I'm going to take my little white bunny, and I did this by coloring him with the light base smoky slate. It was the smoky slate Stampin' Blend, but then I went over it with the lifter, the color lifter. And that just kind of added some clear. And all that did was it made it bleed a little more. And so as that little bit of light ink was to bleed, and I drag it into the middle, that's what kind of gave it the off-white color with the differentiation around the edge. And we're going to put him inside the basket. But I did want his little ear to pop out. And then that's going to get glued on the inside. And then I'm going to use this because I'm only going to glue the basket on the bottom. And I'm going to use the bow to keep the top in place, because I don't want to have to put glue behind there and worry about it oozing out. Okay, now you have probably seen me do this before, but there's a couple ways that you can do this. We could measure down a certain amount and then, you know, cut again like we did with the other. But I like to take this and I center it, and then I make the top flush with this point. So it's kind of doubled at the bottom of what I want it to be. So with the point right here at the edge, so you barely can see that it's just touching that edge. And then I've got the cardstock centered. We're just going to take our paper snips and snip right along the edge. And this is why I dry embossed it first, because the first card that I made, I cut it and then I tried to stick it into the embossing folder and I did it backwards. So it was debossed instead of embossed, which, you know, could have worked, but not what I wanted. You know, I believe there is closed captioning on the videos after they're like processed through YouTube. I have turned them on before. You can even turn them on foreign things. Like sometimes I'll find like a video in French and then I can turn on the video captioning, which is, you know, AI driven by YouTube. So it's not always exactly correct, but, you know, close enough. And I can choose English as my language, and it takes her talking in French and turns it into English subtitles. So take a look for that in your settings and options in the replay. Okay, so I just did the same thing there. I'm laying this down on the piece I want it on, making it flush with the top. You know, so it's flush up here, which is to that point. Then I'm going to come in this way. And then when I move it down, it's going to split the difference of what I had down here and make it fit, and my angle is exact. So pretty fun, huh? Okay, this is using the new Easter Joy Designer Series paper, which again is part of this suite. And it's a specialty designer series paper, which means it's got a little bit of foil accent to it, which I didn't really spot in the catalog. But as you kind of wiggle it around, you can see that those little flowers are indeed foil. So one side of all of the papers has that foil accent idea to it. And then the other side is more basic designer series paper. So this is Easter Joy. So I'm putting kind of a more muted one on the front because I've got that embossing that I kind of wanted to highlight. And we're going to put that here. But I wanted to put a little extra something on it, but I didn't want to distract too much. So I decided to go with just a bow. So I'm going to come in with my white woven ribbon here. It's a 1/2 inch, kind of a linen feel. But I'm going to put my bow maker tool with 2 holes in the middle. And then I'm going to kind of make, I call it a Cancer ribbon. I've got the leftover right, and then I'm going to go underneath and pull it to the back, up and over the top, and then I'm just going to tie a knot. Okay, and this is for sale on my website if you need one. But I am not good with bows on my own in general, so my husband makes these for me because the bows come out perfect every time. And because I want it to go straight across, that's the way I'm pulling the tails. If I wanted the tails to come down as I was tightening the knot, I would have pulled them this way instead of to the side. But I definitely want them to the side for this one because we're going to wrap it around the back. So I'm going to come in with my bow and I'm going to wrap it around to the back. And I did it with glue dots because they're a little thicker and they will hold ribbon better than, you know, using seal, and liquid glue would be a mess. and it kind of stuck, but I don't know if it's the combination of the ribbon and the dry embossing, but it was a little fickle. So what I did to reinforce it was I just took a piece of tear and tape and just laid it over the top. And I'm just not going to peel off the backing because my point is I just want those tails to stay put. But because I have bulk, underneath this layer, what I'm going to do next is just pop that onto my card using dimensionals. This color green is Shy Shamrock. And I pulled that right off of the list on the back of the designer series paper. That was the green that they chose to use. So I just followed suit. Okay, so that's going to pop there on the front. And then we have our inside layer. And we have these little pieces that we cut off. And I thought we could just use, any one of them to just put a little something at the bottom. This one's, directional, so maybe not that one, but the stripes could easily go across the bottom. So I'm just going to adhere the stripes just as an accent because I don't want to end up throwing this piece away. Right? I guess we could do that. Oh, and I suppose I should have stamped my sentiment first. But I'm going to stamp right in the center of this using the Easter basket stamp set. I'm just going to say Easter's on its way. So to mount that, I'm going to set it on my grid paper with one of the words on a line. So that's straight on the line. And then I'm going to put my block straight on a line. And I'm going to put my paper straight on a line. And all of this should keep me nice and neat. Now you don't, when you're using liquid glue, you don't want to use too much because too much liquid glue makes the paper warp and you'll be able to see the streaks of the glue underneath. So just be very careful when you're doing that. Okay, this one, I think I'm going to use tear and tape. And then, like I said, see how my top of my basket's a little bit loose there? By placing my bow right over it, there's sticky above and sticky below, and that's going to hold it in place. So there we have card number 1. So we're going to do card 2, and then I'm going to make envelopes for both of them. So hang out with me here, be patient. Okay, our next card, we're doing the same kind of idea, but we're doing a mini version. So this piece for my base is 9 3/4 by 6 1/4, scored at 3 1/4 and 6 1/2. Okay, so that's going to fold up like that. We're again going to stick this in the trimmer, but this time we're going to point at 1.5 and then put our score line in there, right in the track. So this is the top of the first score line. And we're just going to angle down and cut that off. So there's our base for this one. Then we have the same kind of layers. We have our piece for the front that is dry embossed, that is 3 inches by 4.25. We're going to set that on here, match up the top of this paper with the top of this point, centered in there. And then we're just going to cut that off. I have the bow that I did earlier, so we'll attach that the same way. Mini glue dot on either end. And then I'm going to double secure it by just adding a little bit of tear and tape to hold those ends in place. And then we're going to adhere this layer with dimensionals. Okay, we're again using Shy Shamrock, but I switched up designer series papers, and this is, I think, Splash of Sparkles, but it's another designer series pack that came out in January. So it's got, again, a specialty designer series paper, so it has the foil on one side. Some really pretty spring colors. And then it's got some like watercolor effects on the back. Okay, so I'm going to use the stripes back on the front of my card. So I'm going to match that one up and trim it off. Another thing about doing it this way is I'm definitely going the right way with the angle. When you do the measure and cut version, you have to really be careful that you're doing the right direction. It's not angled in reverse, or you'll be using the other side of the designer series paper. Ask me how I know. Has anybody made their own envelopes before? I know we used to have an envelope tool, like a punch board that we used. It was really handy for a lot of things, but we don't have that anymore. So this one I made manually. With the regular full-on Slimline card, you can also use a business size envelope, you know, the ones that bills come in, that size. That works really well. Okay, I wanted to make this one a birthday card. So I have my inside layer. Again, this is the same size as the designer series paper was. Did I give you that? That was 3 by 6. So both of those were 3 by 6 and then angled. This one, I was going to use both pieces and glue those down, but I'm going to stamp in the middle, and I wanted to try something a little fancy, so I'm not going to set these down yet. In case I make a boo-boo, we can stamp on the other side. But I'm going to come in with the new product of the month. Stampin' Up! Is now doing this thing where if you place a $50 order, you can order the product of the month. For just a few dollars, you get this really cool stamp set. Fabulous sayings. And so there's this happy birthday, but it's a little bit too big. It's longer than my paper, so it's not going to fit. So what I decided to do is I'm going to take and ink up just half of it. Okay, so I'm just kind of selectively laying it over my ink pad and inking half. Then I'm going to take a piece of scrap paper or a Post-it note or tape or something that will protect my surface so that when I come in and stamp this one, okay, I want my happy to land on the Post-it note, not on my paper. Okay, so that gave me one. So now I want to clean this really well. And then I'm actually going to change colors. I could use the same color if I wanted to, but for this I'm going to switch it up. And I'm going to ink up just happy in Pool Party. Then I'm going to do the reverse thing. I'm going to align this so that my happy is where I want it. And the birthday is stamping on the Post-it note. So that worked. So we're clear to put our corners on, and then we can move on to our envelopes. Oh, you know, you're right. It is the product of the month is a $75 order. I'm getting that confused with the $5 bonus. The bonus days you get for a $50 order. I'm sorry about that. Good thing you guys are catching me, huh? Like I said, there's something about turning a camera on that your brain leaves. Okay, so I just used the leftover corners that I cut off here and here. I'm going to place that inside. And so this time, because I had cut this corner off and used it inside, my stripes line up. So there is card number 2. So we have our full size and our mini size slimline card. So now we're going to make some envelopes to go with it. Okay, one for the regular, one for the mini. For our regular one, we're going to start out with a full sheet of 8.5 by 11. Okay, we're going to come in and do some scoring. So I'm going to score this across the short side at 2 and 6. Then I'm going to turn it so that my long side is across the top, and I'm going to score at 3/4 of an inch, and then 9 3/4. Okay. Then I want to remove the bottom, so I'm going to just take a little bit of an angle here, and then I'm going to cut off these 2 sides. And then we're going to do something similar at the top. Okay, I'm going to come over from my score line and I'm just going to angle it just a titch. And then we're going to take off these corners. So how's that for easy, huh? Now we're just going to burnish our score lines. Okay, then I'm going to fold in the shorter side first, and then I'm going to take tear and tape down the wider side. And then that's going to attach. Now you may think, well, maybe I wanted to hide this on the inside. I really don't recommend that because your card sometimes will run into this lip. Even though you've got it glued down, the card will kind of hit it. So I just chose to put it on the outside and consider it a decorative look because the top and the bottom will kind of look the same, right? Because the bottom is going to be glued down anyway. And then when we go to, mail the card, we'll be able to put it in here. Being careful of the bow. And then we would fold this over and then it's ready to address and decorate and all those good things. Okay, for the smaller size, same kind of idea, but we're going to start out with a piece of cardstock that is 7 1/4 by 8 1/2. We're going to do some more scoring. So we're coming in here on the short side. We're going to score at 1 3/4, and I'm using this small ball on this. I use this small ball with cardstock and the larger one with designer series paper because this one goes into the groove, whereas the larger one rides on top, so it doesn't give as deep of a score and it won't rip the designer series paper. But short side, 1 3/4, 5 1/4. And we're going to rotate this way, and it's going to be 1 1/2 and 8. And you guessed it, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to remove those 4 corners by coming in with a little bit of an angle. And then we're going to cut across. And I'm kind of taking the score line with me when I cut it off. Okay, so we're going to take the wider piece because this is the one that's going to overlap onto here, and I'm going to put my tear and tape right along the edge of this one. and then across the short side for our bottom. And there we go. There is our coordinating envelope to match our mini slimline and our full-size slimline standing angle card. That one, and here's the other one. Okay, so I hope I've inspired you to get out your spring colors and play around with some Easter cards and birthday cards and try a new fun fold. Thank you so much for everyone for being here, and I'll see you back here again 2:30 on Monday. Thanks so much. Bye.